Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 1, Episode 4.
If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll show you what I mean. If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll bring you to your knees. If you follow me.
Hello, and welcome to AART, the podcast about female artists. We explore how their lives and art evolved to develop an eye and style in their chosen medium. This is the podcast that explores the women's gaze, the lens through which they see the world. We hear from a range of women across mediums, both professional and amateurs, how they got started, their inspirations and aspirations. My guest this week is the landscape artist who has a special relationship with trees. Some call her the Tree Lady. A Texan through and through, Austin-based Julie Davis came to art following a law degree and 3 children. She had an early interest in 35mm photography, but it wasn't until 2008 when she began taking art classes and meeting artists with whom she's developed friendships that she began to develop her own artistic pathway. Julie is now a full-time artist, attending workshops, showing her work around the country, and inspiring women to do the same. Julie says, "The scenes I choose to paint are rarely nature's standouts. The introvert in me gravitates to the quiet of the landscape and the bits of our surroundings that don't receive regular pause. I like for my work to celebrate the forms and figures in nature that are worthy of, but unaccustomed to our attention. I'm drawn to the individual expressions of trees and the curious lines of long-forgotten structures. Translating and sharing our landscape is where I find my reward as an artist." Julie, hello and welcome to this first season of the podcast. I'm so delighted that you could join me. You're one of the early guests. How does that feel, being a pioneer with us on the show?
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be here. It feels good. It feels good. I appreciate you finding me and look forward to exploring whatever it is that we're going to explore.
Right. We're just going to take the journey through your life and your career in art, because you've clearly made a very successful career of it. But we like to start at the beginning. We like to tell the backstories, Julie. What is it behind the artist? And so often female artists don't have a platform in the way that male artists have had historically, for sure.
Sure.
And I wonder if that has ever impeded you in any way when you started your career.
I came to painting very late, as I may have mentioned to you when we talked earlier, but I was 37 before I even considered painting. And so I kind of avoided probably any of those stumbling blocks, at least until then. And I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'll start with that. I had 3 young kids at home when I started painting, and that was my primary job. I have my background is I have a law degree and a teaching degree, and but I had been raising our kids, and which was an absolute priority and really wonderful and fun, but it took up tons of time. So I think that is always for women been sort of the first stumbling block, is in regards to men. Men have always, traditionally had the spouse as a helper, assistant. A lot of male artists have had that, and you don't really have that as much as female artists, and you've got other demands on your time. So yes, I think that would be the number one.
Yeah, I think that's exactly one of the things that I think, we have to consider with female artists is their challenges, and their journey is very different to men. Mm-hmm. And I think yours is a case in point, having paused to raise a family and then embark on this artistic career of yours. So let's rewind a little bit further back, Julie, sure, to your childhood. You were all-round East Texan girl.
That's true.
It looks like you've ended up in Austin, Texas, which kind of in the middle of all the places that you've lived. You've drawn a circle there and stopped in the middle.
Proximity to family in all different areas of the state. Yeah, I've lived all over Texas.
So when you were growing up then, in your early childhood, Julie, were you exposed to art? Was there art in your family?
Not a tremendous amount. My father, my real father, I didn't grow up with. He painted as a hobby. He was a physician, but he definitely painted and was really into black and white photography, as was his father. And so I kind of had a little glimpse of that, and I'm sure I had that, just in my DNA anyway. And so I grew up loving to draw and make things and that kind of thing. But as far as growing up in a household that we went to museums or any of that, not really. I mean, it was just kind of a regular household. And my parents had some art, but some of it was fine art, but most of it wasn't. And I just kind of had always been attracted to art on my own and the creative act of drawing mostly.
Who inspired you? Who were the artists that you were drawn to then as a child?
As a child, I was really into children's literature and illustration. So I wouldn't know any of the names, but that was sort of my primary, focus. I thought I would maybe grow up to illustrate children's books because I kind of went into education and took that route. My family has a history of educators in it, and so I was very into in high school drafting. I took a couple of years of drafting, and I thought, well, I'll go into architecture and try to work it out that way. But ended up in college doing interior design as my first major, and quickly realized that I couldn't even make my own decisions about my own house, and I didn't want to be doing it for anybody else. So I then switched to something that I knew I could work with and have an instant plug and play, and that was education. And what I probably should have done was art history, because I love history and I was really drawn to art. But hindsight's 20/20, and I probably would have been very, very frustrated if I'd have tried to be an art major at the time, finishing art school and then pausing to have children, and that kind of thing would have been really quite frustrating. So I look at it as it worked out. I ended up going to law school, and I have a great education and raised 3 beautiful kids. And now I get to play artist full time.
Were you encouraged as a child into art?
A little bit, but my family was kind of the opposite. We didn't have any artists in the family as a primary vocation, and absolutely was encouraged to go into a professional route. My stepfather was a physician also, and was an amazing man. And that's kind of the route my family went. Was a couple of brother and sister went into the medical side, and my mom always encouraged me to use art in my life some way. She's like, you need it in your life. But I just didn't. I was always kind of that left brain kid and achiever, and wanted to just, do the things that I loved. School. I loved research. I think that's what led me into law. And so I was encouraged to use it. I think my mom even she got me some art lessons when I was little, but I absolutely hated anyone telling me what to do, and so I quit. And I mean, it was just funny, but I would draw and like make books for my little sister and things like that. And I just didn't really, I thought, well, architecture or something like that would be the outlet. But we just never kind of, had that background in my family history, and nobody thought like that.
Did you have a secret plan that, maybe you would go into law because that was your degree? Maybe you would get married and have a family, but that art was going to come back into your life at some point and you were going to make it meaningful? I
never, ever expected to be a painter. I got into black and white photography when our children were young. and that I learned a lot about composition and lighting and I really enjoyed it. And I kind of thought, well, I could do photography, I could go that route, but it never occurred to me to paint. It just seemed like such a hill to climb. Like I had painted in acrylics and dabbled in it with my kids when they were little, but I never thought, like, where would I learn to paint in oil? It seems so beyond me, but it found me.
How did it find you?
We moved to Austin when our kids were kind of 3, 5, and 7, I think, and had some friends after not too long that were neighbors, and they invited us to an event in Austin that was called the Art House 5x7, and it was an event downtown at artists from all over the state would send in a painting. They were invited to send in painting. Then they would only sign it on the back, and everything was 5x7 inches. And so it was a mystery who the artist was. It could be somebody really wonderful and famous, or it could be just your average Joe. And at 9:00 at this event, the bell would ring and everyone would get to choose a painting. But before that, they had a raffle. And I happened to win the raffle randomly because I don't win things, but I won. And I got to pick before anyone else. So me being always in love with outdoors and the land, and I think gravitating toward landscape art, a lot of it was abstract. And this one piece was a landscape. And I went straight to it and picked that one. And I ended up meeting the artist at that event that night. She was there with a friend of mine, and my friend introduced us. And I learned that this artist also taught at the Laguna Gloria, which is an art education museum here. And so I kind of thought, maybe I'll take a few classes, and that's what I ended up doing. And that artist became a dear friend and mentor to me, and really kind of gave me the push that I needed to get into doing this, and made it seem possible. And it was, she is a dear friend.
Do we give her a shout out? Absolutely.
Her name is Laurel Daniel. And she is also based in Austin, and she's a little bit older than I am. So she's got grandchildren now, and she's traveling a ton, seeing them all over the States. But she paints a lot. She paints in Georgia and around here. And she's a wonderful artist and a wonderful friend.
So she obviously was obviously inspired you, but was almost a mentor to you in some way. Yeah.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, she was the first one who said, I think you want to do more with this than just, she would always have this questionnaire at the beginning of her classes, about maybe why you want to be painting or that kind of thing. What are your goals? And I just said, I just want to know how to do it. Like, I just want to, as a creative outlet, and she said, I think you can do more with this. And I really appreciated that from her. And it just opened my eyes to maybe I could do it.
Did you feel that?
Which was a whole new world.
Clearly, yes. And I'm wondering, though, did you feel it necessary to take classes? Were you looking for technique? What were you looking for in those classes?
Anything. I had no idea. I had no clue what to do. Because I really, I'd grown up drawing, and like I said, done a tiny bit of acrylic, but I didn't know what was the best surface to paint on, what kind of tools, how you approach painting at all. And so I was just looking to learn the basics. And I do remember her class description said some experience required. And I was like, well, none. So I signed up for this other class that was sort of an intro, and there were 6 classes. And I think I missed 3 of them because my kids were sick, or, something else came up, and because they were little still. And so I made 3 of the 6 classes. And I thought at the end of it, well, I've got some experience and I'm going to sign up for her class. And so I did. And, she was great. She really took me under her wing and was a tremendous teacher. Now I've taken classes. I have taken workshops from many different artists, kind of zeroed in on who I thought was going to be what I wanted to learn would be teaching that. And so over the next, stretch, I took from Laurel for like 3 years, and then just kind of, she shoved me out and said, go figure this, you need to find some other people, figure this out on your own. And I thought, oh God. But I realized quickly that she had been an enormously responsible and high level teacher. She was teaching me all the right things. So I feel like I was able to come at learning with a degree of open-mindedness that a lot of my fellow students didn't have because they'd been to art school previously and maybe had taken a break, but I had none of that. So I was very open to whatever she was teaching me. And fortunately, she was teaching me a lot of the completely great, appropriate concepts. And those were reinforced when I went and found, teachers of other styles and later on. But so deeply appreciative.
How would you describe your early paintings then, Julie, when you did get let loose to define your eye and your style?
You tend to, I think it's natural, just like when you hear someone with an accent, and I'll try not to pick up yours, but when you watch someone paint, or you're learning, you're trying to emulate. So a little bit of, for sure, influence from Laurel. And then, but when I think being released a little bit, I would love to hear someone else describe it probably, but I feel like, she's just got her own handwriting, if you will, and I've got mine, and mine may be a little bit more abstract. I always think of hers as very lyrical, and mine tends to, I'm more of a tonalist. She's more of a colorist. At least that's how I think in my head, and my style is just a little bit, maybe, I don't know, harder edges. Again, hard to describe one's own art.
Well, I know that it is, but I'm also curious as to in terms of your journey, how you would describe your art now and how really it's evolved with the experience that you've had over the years now.
Yeah, and I try to, keep doing that because I do feel like I will be learning forever. I still feel like I just started painting in some ways. There's so much to understand and so many different techniques to try, and even surfaces and brushes still, and colors, and mediums. And there's just an infinite number of things to experiment with. And it's, so I'm still pushing, I think I've lately been more, again, pushing a little bit more into the tonalist realm, wanting to try that, very inspired by that, and getting a little more abstract if I can in certain areas. I still am very traditional at heart, but I kind of walked that line, I guess, between Austin and Texas. It's like, I am of Texas. I'm also of Austin. So maybe that's a good analogy.
How would you describe your personality? And you'll probably say, well, other people should describe it. But in terms of a autobiographical concept here, where would you see your personality and how it comes across in your art? How your personality might have been influenced by art? It seems to be almost sort of a two-way street, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it definitely does. There's definitely a give and take communication between what you love and who you are, and also what comes out of you as an artist. I've had people describe my art as very calming and peaceful, and I think that is also part of who I am. I've had people. My mother-in-law and my mother actually described my household as very peaceful and calming, even with 3 kids at home. So I guess that kind of is a thread that runs through everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I was going to ask you, actually what you like to hear about your art if you're overhearing a conversation, maybe at a gallery, and people don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that somebody having an emotional reaction of some sort, and it almost doesn't matter. I mean, I guess even if it's bad, they're having a reaction, but I think having, I like to hear just their individual reaction to it, where they meet that painting, because I want to know what they experience from it. I don't necessarily want to think that they're experiencing the exact same thing that I did, because everyone's different and everyone will approach a painting differently. But yeah, something unexpected might be nice, and positive. but as long as they're having their own experience, I think that's a wonderful thing, because that's, to me, the point of making art that I'm going to try to sell and put on someone's wall and that kind of thing. You want people to have an emotional experience with the landscape that, in some way that is positive, like I have,
Yeah, that it's evocative and, as you say, triggers some emotional response. And I want to go to that experience and that emotional response that you have when you're outdoors, because that seems to be your happy place when you're painting plein air. Landscapes are landscapes, right? You have to be in them in a way.
Yes.
To really capture the emotion that it's giving to you. Tell me a little bit about that sort of step for you in terms of your artistic development, that you found, okay, it's going to be landscapes. I need to be outdoors for this. The studio just won't do it for me.
Laurel is a big plein air painter. And so her classes started off, it was either still life or it was plein air. And her landscape classes were never indoors. And so early on, right away, I was learning technique in still life, and I was learning plein air, which that's a whole other beast, and instantly it fit me. It felt right. It met me where I needed to be. I was tomboy as a little girl. I was always outside playing in the dirt, and really appreciated just a beautiful view or a sunset, or just being outdoors. I just always love it. And so that felt very natural to me, to be making art outdoors. Very emotional. I've always felt a spiritual connection when being outside. That's the best place for me to find, a connection to my faith and to God, and to being spiritual, and practicing that for me is being outdoors. There's nothing more powerful to me than that. So, being, outdoors painting was kind of just an absolute natural fit. And it was actually harder to get me to come inside to slow down and paint in the studio than it ever was to get me outside. Even though painting outdoors is really, really hard. And even now, I think that I've been working in the studio. All of my work comes from plein air pieces, but I've been in the studio. I'm usually probably half a year. I mean, on average, and it's sometimes hard to get me back out. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do this. It's like riding a bike, but it's really hard. There's so many things you have to contend with.
And obviously the elements, the weather. Particularly the wind, the sun, for example, even if it's not raining.
The bugs.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
yeah. How do you set yourself up though when you look at the weather forecast and out you go?
Yes, you just got to be always prepared. I mean, I'm always I tend to do my plein air in chunks these days. Like I'll set aside, okay, this week I'm going to go out every day, rather than like once a week or something like that. Or we'll go somewhere and I'll be there for a month, and I'm going to absorb and go out every single day, all day. So I've got my pack ready to go. And you've always got all the basics, like the hat and the sunscreen, the bug spray, and the whistle, for women painting alone. And that's a whole other other thing, but umbrella, and then maybe paint under the shade of the back hatch of the car, or maybe you're, if it's windy, in the car in the back hatch, or just you've got to be prepared for safety and the elements and light changing and all those good things. It's just, there's a lot to it.
Just go back to the safety aspect, if you would, Julie, and you mentioned the whistle there. Talk about that.
Well, I would love to be able to go anywhere, and paint. Obviously, you're not going to trespass, but just being a female out alone on the side of a road somewhere is just not regarded as a good idea. So going in pairs, going in group, that kind of thing is smart. Or I stay, in a very busy area, stay at a trailhead instead of out on a trail by myself. Always carry a whistle, just because that's the most basic thing I can carry that, can make sure I can signal for help if I need it. But at times I've kept a knife in my pack, it's just, and I just find that I limit myself, I'm sure, more than men do. I think women have to think about that a lot more, going out on their own.
Have you ever been sort of in a position where you've had to pack up and leave because you felt in some way threatened, or even by the wildlife?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing, right? Yes, I have been threatened by wildlife and got back up and left. I ran into a bear on a trail this fall in Jackson, Wyoming, and he went the other way, and so did I. We both reversed course at one point, but an elk and things like that. But I have never had an encounter with a person where I felt threatened. But you do, I've had, you have people pull up in their car or, and slow down and ask a question, and sort of your feelers go up and you kind of assess the situation. And I did have one point, I guess it was last fall, I felt uncomfortable, unwelcome. And I said, you know what, I'm going to wrap this up. There was no way it was going to escalate, but it was just, you don't belong here. And I wasn't on private property or anything, but I was near a driveway that was that. So it was like, you just kind of have to always be aware. And snakes, you're so quiet when you're painting, and you're by a body of water, somewhere where snakes are here in Texas. They slither by once in a while, and they may be a very large snake, and they're very quiet. and so it's kind of like, okay, but you never know. Snake-proof boots are a good idea.
Yeah, well, to be aware of your surroundings, obviously. Yeah.
Right. And it's very hard to do while you're painting, because, you get into that place, that zone, and you're really into making the art and all those thoughts that go into that and the problem solving. But it's important, just as it is to step back from your painting very often. And that's also a good habit that keeps you aware of your surroundings. For example, if you're in the habit of walking back 10 feet from your painting when you're outside, you're going to be more aware of your surroundings because you're doing that and stopping to do that once in a while. So both good habits for two reasons.
Yeah, but turn around before you step back in case there's a snake behind you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the rattlesnakes you usually hear, but
yeah.
Water moccasins, not so much.
No, the perils of being a plein air painter. And
right.
Those sessions and those outdoor sessions, what do you aim for? Or do you make the time, or does the time restrict you? I mean, I'm sure all painters like to think, oh, well, I've got as long as I need. But realistically, how do you gauge your time so that you don't have any inhibitions in what you're creating?
Well, I think that the time limit, the light limits me, and then just life and time limits and that kind of thing. But so I try to make sure that I have that, I know what my time is. I also, when I'm outdoors, I tend to not try to finish a painting, make a great work of art. When I'm outdoors, I'm trying to study the landscape, get as much information as I can from it, because, and this originated a couple of reasons. Jill Carver is a huge influence on my art. And I took lessons from her pretty early on, a few times. And I think it was in 2015, I started doing this. She had us divide a larger panel into 4 sections with painter's tape, and just focus on getting some good color studies in, and not worrying about composition, and not worrying about, all the little things you try to get in, but just try to get those color notes that are critical to this scene, and then turn around a little bit in 45 minutes and do another one. And then in 45 minutes, do another one. And so you've got this whole, I turned that into, for me, when I would go out, and still do, I will do that. I'll divide them up. And so I have 4 small sketches, color sketches on one panel. And that kind of describes the morning for me, or the afternoon, or that day, wherever I was painting. And they're all in one place and easy to access. And it also takes me away from holding a painting is so precious while I'm outside that I want to finish it, and it's got to be perfect. And it just gives me the freedom to study and gather information, if you will. Yes,
that's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it? Because I'm sure there are painters that or maybe like to go out and finish a painting, get from start to finish.
Yeah, that's what I always did. And that's, the plein air circuit and all that it encourages, when you get into some of those competitions, that's what you're doing, and you're competing to do that, to create a winning painting. But when I'm just painting for myself and for my process, I don't try to execute a perfect painting outside. Maybe that happens sometimes, but generally I'm just trying to gather information and come back in the studio and let it be more thoughtful about it, and really apply the outdoors to whatever I'm doing on a bigger piece inside.
You seem to have a special relationship and affinity for trees.
I do.
Share that with us.
I don't know where that came from. When I first started painting in Laurel's classes, I remember thinking everything is so intimidating. There's a tree everywhere I go, and everything I paint looks like broccoli. And I just couldn't decipher it. It's one of those things you just have to tackle trees to be a landscape artist, obviously. And I thought, I've got to figure it out. And there are no shortcuts, it's only learning by doing. And so every time, in all of a certain number of Laurel's classes after I decided that, I thought, for a year, I'm going to only paint. My subject is going to be a tree or a group of trees, or I'm not going to even try to pick anything else. I'm just going to tackle trees. And it was the best thing I did. I mean, I became absolutely comfortable. And of course, now I can't seem to kick the habit, but it taught me so much. I learned so much. And then I was blogging at the time, and I think I started posting, these tree studies, and people noticed. And then I started becoming, called the tree painter, and it just sort of snowballs from there. But so now I've done a workshop on trees. I'm about to do another one, and I don't want subject matter to dominate, my artistic identity, but to some extent, that is what I love now. I mean, there's just so much. I think of portraits of trees when I paint them. I think of very human characteristics, and they're different everywhere I go. So it's interesting to see that, if you've flown into a place and your first impression when you're really tuned into some part of the landscape is it's very interesting, because we'll land and I'm like, wow, look at these trees. So it's been something that it's just fed on itself, I think.
We've talked off air, Julie, about size of canvases too. And you seem to be drawn to the smaller canvas, but you are able to switch back. It's not that you don't do something larger, but that seems to be your comfort zone. And is it for practical purposes?
I think initially it was, I learned plein air. So that is part of it. Very practical. You're going to work smaller when you're outdoors, just by design. And so for 3 years, that was it. Also, my children were, I think in middle school and elementary school when I started painting, and I didn't have a studio. We were in a very small house, and my studio was in our kitchen, and it was in this little tiny corner of the kitchen. And I basically had a tabletop easel that I would set up, and I had about probably 45 minutes in a day that I had to paint if I wanted to paint. And so I would get up at like 5 a.m. and try to paint this little 6x6. It was kind of this magic size for me. And just to learn how to move paint and use the brush and practice. And I would paint for about 45 minutes, and that's all I had. And then I had to get the kids up and get them to school, and, a million things going on. And gradually I was able to kind of come back and do, paint longer and that kind of thing. But initially it was all about time in the day, and alla prima painting. I was painting only wet and wet. That's how I learned. And so it wasn't, I didn't learn how to come back to a piece and go over it and fuss over it. And so it was a time constraint and space constraint and plein air that influenced that, and it got kind of hardwired into my DNA. And I've learned to get out of that and to do bigger pieces. And I occasionally will find it fun, and it's interesting because I get to explore concepts in a much bigger format, and I'm sure I'll continue to do that. But there's something special about a small painting, hanging somewhere. It's just a little moment in it. And you, first of all, a small painting, you can hang it anywhere, I mean, as a consumer of art, I love that. I'm like, it's not a huge commitment to something that takes up a big part of your wall. You can put small art together on a gallery wall and have all these different experiences versus just one. And I think all of that comes together to be the reason why I still love kind of smaller art.
And what are your preferred mediums now?
Oil and canvas panels or linen mounted on panel. So that's pretty much my spot. I'm using gouache a little bit more when I travel for small, quick studies, and easy to travel and easy to pack, and you don't have to check it and that kind of thing. So if we go somewhere for a long weekend, or where I'm not going to have a lot of time, where it's not exactly a painting weekend, it's more of a family weekend, but I still want to paint, I'll take the gouache with me. And I've really enjoyed learning to use that. There's something wonderful about a water-based medium, that the freedom that water takes with what you're doing. It has its own mind, and that's kind of fun.
Have you inspired your own children? Are they into art at all?
I wish. The middle one, yes, she could do this if she wanted to. She's very creative. They're all very creative, but the older and the youngest are both more into the business world, but very creative within that, I think. And the middle one was an apparel design major in college, and went on to do a master's at Parsons in New York, and strategic design, which is not necessarily like art based at all, but it's kind of design within any type of business. So she's got it. She still sews, and definitely will always have a creative aspect to her personality. But I don't put any pressure on them, because, I was 37 before I figured out that this is what I wanted to do. So they've got time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have received so many honors and you've had exhibitions and shows all over the country now, Julie, so you're very, very well established. And I'm curious as to how you would define success then at this point in your career.
Well, respect among your peers, I think is, that's the biggest definition of success. It's not necessarily commercial, but yeah. And I think just the honors of garnering some of the awards at these national shows are, that's the biggest signifier of success for me. I was fortunate to last week in Charleston at the Oil Painters of America show, completely out of the blue. I did the wet paint competition and got an award of excellence for my painting in that, which, it's fantastic to receive an honor anywhere, anytime. And that one was particularly welcome, but that kind of thing is really affirming and just kind of shows me I'm on the right path and makes me, it's gratifying.
How do you value your art? That always seems to be challenging for artists.
Yeah, it is. I remember doing that for the first time, and I had a show at a local shop that a friend owned here in Austin, and she was sweet enough to let me have wall space for part of a night that she did an opening, and I sold out of everything. And I think it was just like, it was really close. I mean, I not started painting much earlier, but everything was definitely respectable and worthy of being hung. But I priced it so low that, it was just like it all just went. And I was like, well, that's a great feeling. So it's a balance between, selling everything and then I have, everybody was like, you should charge more. You should charge more. And when you're first painting, it definitely feels weird to do that, to charge anything. But, as you start getting, more experience and certainly awards and things, it helps you feel validated and worthy of putting a decent price on your work. And talking with gallerists, I have fortunate enough to be represented by 3 great galleries and a featured artist in a 4th as of this summer. And I'm always taking into account the gallery owner or manager's opinion. And you want to, you got to get everybody on the same page, but we'll evaluate my pricing, every year, every other year, that kind of thing, and decide what to do. So that's part of the benefit of being in a gallery is knowing, having their experience and the oversight that they have of, all the different artists and work and that kind of thing. I think that's important.
And your reputation. I mean, aside from being the tree lady and and your paintings evoking, that calm, that tranquility, what do you like to think about in terms of your reputation and your legacy in years to come?
Well, I'd like to make my kids proud. I think there's a New Yorker cartoon years ago that I clipped and I have it somewhere on a notebook, and it was when I started painting at first, and it's a very good mission statement, I guess. It's a woman standing in front of an easel, and she's got a painting, and then her friend is standing behind her, kind of looking at it, critiquing, and they're having a conversation about it, and the friend kind of thoughtfully looking at it and says, "You could totally do this as an embarrassing hobby." I just want to avoid that. That was my motivator. It's like, not an embarrassing hobby. That is a good standard. So, I want to have, I've got certain things I want to achieve. And I'm not there yet, not at all. But, we'll see what it ends up being. But I think I'm on a good path.
What's next?
Immediately next is Knoxville. I'm going to the American Impressionist Society show, the small work show. And I'm going to take part in in all that goes along with that. And I have a piece in the show. And then I come back from that and I'll start painting for just for, keeping my galleries happy and working on pieces for another show that I want to enter. Those come up, several times a year, and it's always a challenge to be prepared with what you consider your best work for those shows and also for your gallery. So it's a constant process.
I'm going to ask you what you're most proud of so far, because with all the awards that you've had, the honors that you've had and shows and so on, it probably is hard to pick out maybe one or two, is it, of the works that you're most proud of?
There have been significant moments, and I hope that there will be more significant moments. I was pretty excited to win when I was in New York right before COVID, 2019. I was at the American Impressionist Society show up there, had a piece at the Salmagundi Club, which I'm a member of, which is also pretty fun to become a member of that historic club. But AIS had a Central Park paint out for all its members, and it was judged by an esteemed painter, and I won first place, and that was pretty exciting. So I haven't done a lot of plein air competitions. I did started one 2013, 14, and won the one I did, and I could push myself to do that, but I choose to kind of have a certain level of balance in my life. And anyway, I guess that award in New York was pretty fun. And my next challenge has been teaching. I'm getting into doing that more consistently. And I will be pretty proud of myself if I can pull this off and please the students and start to really impart some knowledge that I've learned to some other people.
I was going to ask you what kind of advice you would give to young women, going back to where we started, how you came into it is having had a career, having raised a family, and then doing this for fun. And I'm sure there are a lot of women who are thinking, well, I'd like to have a go, but I'm not sure where to start. What advice would you give them?
There's no shortcuts. And be patient. Be patient with yourself, and there's always going to be a moment. I remember when I first started, and someone I was painting was kind of in the same, I guess, category of ability as he was. And we were from different parts of the country, and he didn't have a family yet. He had a spouse, but I had 3 kids, and we were at the same level. And then, over the next few years, I just kind of watched him get out there and his name get known. And I was like, yeah, I know I can do that. But I had 2 very wonderful women in my life. One is Laurel, and Virginia Vaughn is another artist who had mentioned one time in passing that, basically your kids are home. This is the only time they're going to be around like this. And they're the priority. And for me, that was definitely the case. I didn't want to miss out on anything. So I prioritized them and was patient with the rest of it, knew I wasn't going to be able to jump out there. But when I was able to, when they all finished high school and went to college and then finished college, and now I can do it full time, and it's here, and it's a great, great thing for me to get to do at this point in my life. So I think be patient, know that there aren't any shortcuts, be professional and organized. That will get you much further than you think, because not everybody is. And just study. Look at it like anything else. Like if you're going to be good at something, you just got to put the work in and study.
Great advice. Julie, before we let you go, tell everybody how they can find you online and on social media.
My Instagram is Julie Davis Studio, and my website is juliedavisstudio.com. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I think Facebook is also Julie Davis Studio. I don't get on that very much, but Instagram is where I'm most active.
Yes, that's certainly where you've got a great following too there on
thank you. Yeah, I'm fortunate.
Instagram. Wonderful. What would we do without social media for marketing?
I don't know. I would be a lot worse at it. That's for sure. Not my instinct.
Julie, this has been an absolute delight. I'm so glad you could join us on the show this early, and how it will evolve, hopefully, sharing these stories of female artists. And so when you can, I'm going to get you to tag some other women for me that you want to give a shout out to. And yeah, I think that's what we need to do. We have to stick together and continue to share the work of female artists everywhere. And so with that, I want to thank you again very much for spending the time with us. It's been a joy, and I've loved it.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
And we will be following you on Instagram.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
And we'll put links to social media in the show notes accompanying this episode. And if you missed an episode before, we started this season with Alexa King in episode 1. Episode 2 was Debbie Mueller. And on episode 3, Lindsay Mullen. My guest next week will be amateur artist Jess Furshine, who hails from Washington, D.C. And also coming up on this first season of Art will be Susie Baker. We'll have lots more women artists for you from across different mediums from around the country and around the world. So I hope you'll download and subscribe and share with anyone you think who may be interested in learning about women artists. My thanks again to my guest, Julie Davis. I hope you'll follow us on social media at the AART Podcast. That's the AART Podcast on Instagram, where you can leave your comments, questions, or suggestions for guests for the show. And you can also reach me via email at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. That's HOLLOWELL studios@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I do hope you'll join me again next time.